The smell of grilled meat filled the small restaurant. Han Dojin stood behind his cooking station, turning strips of beef over the hot flames. His hands moved with practice and care. He had done this 1,000 times before. Earth's kitchen was a tiny place on Harmony 7, a huge space station where beings from across the galaxy came to trade and talk. The restaurant had only 12 tables. The walls were simple, but the food was honest, and that was what mattered to Dojin. "Table 4 wants more of the spicy pork," said Yoon Mirai, walking up to the counter. She was Dojin's partner. She handled the customers while he handled the kitchen. They had worked together for 3 years now. "Coming up," Dojin said. He placed fresh meat on the grill. The fat sizzled and popped. Mirai looked toward the station's main corridor. Something was happening outside. Beings were moving quickly, pressing against the walls. "Something big is coming through," she said. Dojin looked up from his work. Through the restaurant's front window, he saw them. The Morath. They were massive creatures. Each one stood 3 meters tall, covered in dark scales that looked like armor. Their eyes were yellow and sharp. Their hands ended in claws that could cut through metal. The Morath were known across the galaxy as the greatest hunters. They feared nothing. Nothing feared them back. A group of 5 walked down the corridor. Other beings stepped aside quickly. Even the station security kept their distance. The one in front was bigger than the others. He wore a sash across his chest that showed his rank. This was Vextorath, the Morath ambassador. Dojin had heard of him. Everyone had heard of him. The group stopped right in front of Earth's kitchen. "What is that smell?" one of the Morath asked. His voice was deep and rough. Vextorath turned his huge head toward the restaurant. His yellow eyes found the grill, then found Dojin. "Ah," he said, "the humans and their fire." He stepped closer to the entrance. Other beings in the corridor watched but said nothing. "I have always wondered about this," Vextorath said. His voice carried easily. He wanted everyone to hear. "The humans burn their food before they eat it. Do you know why?" His companions made sounds that might have been laughter. "It is because they are afraid," Vextorath continued. "They are prey animals, weak, soft. They cannot eat real meat because their bodies reject it. So they burn it until it is dead twice over. Only then can their weak stomachs accept it." Mirai's hands became fists at her sides. "We should ignore him," she whispered to Dojin. "He wants a reaction." Dojin said nothing. He kept turning the meat on his grill. Vextorath was not finished. "On my world, we eat the flesh of creatures that would make these humans soil themselves in terror. We eat it raw, still warm, as true predators do. We do not need fire to make our food safe." He made that laughing sound again. "Humans are not hunters. They are survivors. There is a difference." A small crowd had gathered now. Beings from many worlds watched the scene. Some nodded along with the Morath. The idea that humans were a weak species was common in the galaxy. Humans had only been part of the Galactic Union for 30 years. They were still new, still proving themselves. Krixall, a translator who often ate at Earth's kitchen, pushed through the crowd. He was an insectoid being with 4 arms and large eyes. "Ambassador," he said carefully, "perhaps this is not the place for such talk." "I speak only truth," Vextorath said. "If the humans are offended, let them prove me wrong." He looked directly at Dojin. "Can you, little cook? Can you show me that humans are more than frightened prey hiding behind their fires?" The restaurant was silent. Everyone waited. Dojin finally looked up from his grill. His face was calm. His voice was steady. "Would you like to make a wager, Ambassador?" Vextorath's eyes narrowed. He had not expected this. "A wager?" the ambassador repeated. "Yes." Dojin wiped his hands on his apron. "You say humans fear meat. You say we cannot handle real prey. I say you are wrong." "Dojin," Mireille warned, but he held up a hand. The HFY, Dojin said. I have heard of it. Your people call it the ultimate prey, the most dangerous creature in the galaxy. Even your hunters need 20 warriors to bring one down. Vex Torath's scales shifted color slightly. You know of the HFY? I am a chef, Dojin said simply. I study meat. All meat. Then you know that no human could ever hunt such a creature. Here is my wager, Dojin said. I will hunt a HFY. I will kill it. And then I will cook it and serve it to you, right here on this station, in front of everyone. If I succeed, you will admit publicly that humans are true predators. That we do not fear meat. That cooking is not weakness. The crowd murmured. This was madness. Everyone knew it was madness. And if you fail? Vex Torath asked. If you die or run away or cannot complete this foolish task, then this restaurant closes forever, and you can tell the galaxy that you were right about humans. Mireille grabbed Dojin's arm. You cannot do this. You will die. But Dojin was still looking at Vex Torath. Do we have a deal, Ambassador? For a long moment, the Morath stared at the small human behind the grill. Then his mouth opened, showing rows of sharp teeth. It was a smile. We have a deal, little cook, Vex Torath said. I will even provide transport to my homeworld. I want to watch you fail in person. He turned and walked away, his companions following. The crowd parted for them. Mireille stared at Dojin. What have you done? Crixal moved closer, his many eyes wide with concern. My friend, the HFY has killed Morath warriors, trained hunters. You are a cook. Dojin turned back to his grill. The meat was ready. He placed it on a plate with careful hands. I was not always a cook, he said quietly. Before I came to space, I served in the military. I learned things there, old things, things humans used to do before we had guns and ships and technology. What things? Mireille asked. Dojin looked at her. Humans were never the fastest or the strongest. We could not fly or swim deep or see in the dark. But we survived. We became the top predators on our world. Do you know how? She shook her head. Patience, Dojin said. We had patience that no other creature could match. We would follow our prey for days. We would walk when they ran. We would rest when they could not. And in the end, we would always catch them. He picked up his knife and began preparing the next order. The Morath think they understand hunting, he said. But they only know one kind. The fast kind. The violent kind. They have never met a predator that simply refuses to stop. Crixal and Mireille exchanged looks. I need to make some calls, Dojin continued. There are people who can help, old friends, people who remember the old ways. And then? Mireille asked. Dojin smiled. It was a small smile, but there was something in it that Mireille had never seen before. Something old, something dangerous. And then we go hunting. The ship to Morath Prime was cold and dark. The Morath did not need much light. Their eyes could see in shadows that would blind a human. Dojin sat in the small human section of the ship. Mireille sat next to him. She had refused to stay behind. If you are going to die, she had said, I want to be there to say I told you so. Across from them sat Bei Sunho, a man Dojin had called from the station's research center. Sunho was 42 years old with gray in his hair and scars on his hands. He had spent his life studying alien animals. He knew more about creatures from other worlds than most aliens did. Tell me about the HFY, Dojin said. Sunho pulled up images on his tablet. The creature on the screen made Mireille take a sharp breath. The HFY was massive, 6 legs, each ending in claws as long as a man's arm, a body covered in plates of natural armor, a head with 4 eyes and a mouth full of teeth that curved backward like hooks. Spines ran along its back, and Sunho explained that these spines held poison. It is about the size of a small shuttle, Sunho said. Maybe 5 meters long, weighs around 2 tons. Its blood is acidic. If you cut it and the blood touches you, it will burn through your skin. Wonderful, Mirai muttered. It can sense fear, Sunho continued. Not like a feeling, actually sense it. The creature picks up chemicals that frightened beings release. When it smells fear, it attacks. So if Dojin gets scared, it will know, Mirai said. Yes. That is one reason the Morath lose so many hunters. Even their warriors feel fear sometimes, and when they do, the Kreshaval feels it too. Dojin studied the image. What are its weaknesses? Sunho smiled slightly. I was hoping you would ask that. The Kreshaval is fast, very fast. In short distances, nothing can catch it, and it can catch anything. But it has one problem. Tell me. It cannot sweat. It has no way to cool its body during long activity. If it runs hard for more than a few minutes, its body temperature rises. It has to stop and rest, or it will overheat. Dojin nodded slowly. Persistence hunting. Exactly, Sunho said. Humans are one of the best distance hunters in any galaxy. We sweat. We can regulate our body temperature while moving. We can walk for hours, even days, without stopping. Most creatures cannot. Mirai looked between the two men. So the plan is to walk it to death? The plan is to tire it until it cannot run anymore, Dojin said. Then finish it cleanly. Krixal, who had been listening from a nearby seat, clicked his mandibles. This is how humans hunted on Earth? Before your technology? For thousands of years, Dojin said. Our ancestors could not outrun a deer or a horse, but they could follow one for an entire day. They would track it, chase it, force it to keep running. Eventually, the animal would collapse. Its body would give out from exhaustion and heat. Then the humans would kill it. That sounds cruel, Krixal said. It sounds like survival, Dojin replied. The ship landed on Morath Prime 2 days later. The planet was dark and hot. The air was thick and smelled like metal. Everything about this world was designed to kill. Vextorath was waiting for them. He had a group of 20 Morath warriors with him, all armed with traditional hunting weapons, blades, spears, nets made from wire that could cut through bone. Welcome to my world, little cook, Vextorath said. His teeth showed in what might have been a smile. We have located a Kreshaval in the eastern hunting grounds. My warriors will hunt it tomorrow. You may watch. I thought I was going to hunt it, Dojin said. You will have your chance. First, you will see how real predators do it. Perhaps you will learn something. Perhaps you will decide to go home and keep your little restaurant. The other Morath laughed. The next morning, Dojin watched the hunt. The Morath warriors spread out in a formation. They moved through the rocky landscape with their weapons ready. Drones flew above, recording everything. Millions of beings across the galaxy would watch this. They found the Kreshaval in a cave. It was even bigger than the images had shown. When it saw the hunters, it charged. The Morath were fast, they were strong, they were brave, and they were not enough. The creature moved like water and hit like stone. Its claws tore through armor. Its teeth crushed weapons. The poison in its spines dropped 2 warriors in seconds. The hunt became chaos. After 10 minutes, Vextorath called for retreat. 4 of his warriors were injured. 2 could not walk. The Kreshaval returned to its cave, barely scratched. That night, the Morath camp was quiet. The warriors treated their wounds and spoke in low voices. Vextorath stood apart from the others, staring at the distant cave. Dojin approached him. Tomorrow, he said. I would like to try. The ambassador turned. His yellow eyes studied the human. You saw what happened today. My best warriors, armed, trained, and they failed. I saw. And you still want to go? Yes. Vextorath made a sound that might have been respect or pity. Very well. What do you need? Weapons? Warriors to support you? Dojin shook his head. I go alone. No weapons except this. He held up his kitchen knife. The blade was 30 centimeters long, simple and clean. And I need 1 day to prepare. 1 day? To study the ground, to plan my route, to get ready. Vextorath's scales shifted colors. Among his people, this showed confusion. You are mad, human. But I will allow it. The drones will record everything. When you die, the galaxy will see. When I succeed, Dojin said calmly, the galaxy will see that too. He walked back to where Mirai and the others waited. She grabbed his arm as soon as he was close enough. You cannot do this alone, she said. You saw that thing. It destroyed their warriors. Their warriors tried to fight it, Dojin said. I will not fight it. I will follow it. For how long? As long as it takes. Sunho handed him a pack. Water, nutrient bars, a tracker so we know where you are, medical supplies. He paused. You know the risks, Dojin. I know. The heat, the terrain, the creature itself. Any of them can kill you. Dojin took the pack. My grandmother used to tell me a story about how our ancestors hunted before history. They would leave their village and walk into the wild. Sometimes they came back with food. Sometimes they did not come back at all, but they always walked forward. He looked toward the cave in the distance. The Kreshval was in there, waiting. It did not know what was coming. Humans survive, Dojin said quietly. That is what we do. We walk forward until there is nothing left in our way. He picked up his knife and began to sharpen it. The sound of metal on stone filled the air. The secret to good meat, he said, more to himself than anyone else, is not the kill, it is the patience. Tomorrow, he would show the galaxy what patience really meant. The sun rose over Morath Prime. It was a red sun, angry and hot. The rocks turned orange in its light. The air began to warm. Dojin stood at the edge of the camp. He wore simple clothes, light shirt, strong pants, good boots. On his belt hung his knife and a water bottle. On his back was a small pack with food and supplies. Nothing else. Mirai stood beside him. Her eyes were red. She had not slept. Come back, she said. That is all I ask. Just come back. Dojin touched her shoulder. I will. And when I do, I will cook you the best meal you have ever eaten. He turned and began walking toward the distant cave. Behind him, the Morath warriors watched. Their drones flew into the sky to follow. Across the galaxy, billions of beings turned on their screens. A human was hunting a Kreshval, alone. The first hour was easy. Dojin walked at a steady pace, not fast, not slow. He breathed evenly. He watched the ground ahead. The terrain was rough, sharp rocks, deep cracks, no shade anywhere. He reached the cave by mid-morning. The Kreshval was inside. He could hear it breathing, deep, heavy sounds, a predator at rest. Dojin picked up a stone and threw it into the cave. The sound echoed. The breathing stopped. Then came a roar that shook the ground. The Kreshval exploded from the darkness, 6 legs churning, eyes locked on the tiny human, mouth open wide. Dojin did not run. He stood still and watched it come. His heart beat fast, but he controlled his breathing. He could not let fear take him. If he did, the creature would sense it. At the last moment, he stepped aside. The creature rushed past him. Its claws missed his arm by centimeters. It skidded to a stop, confused. Its prey had not fled. Why had its prey not fled? The Kreshval turned and charged again. Again, Dojin moved at the last second. The creature was fast, but it was built for catching running prey. A target that did not run confused it. After the third charge, the creature stopped. It circled Dojin, studying him. In all its years, it had never seen anything like this. Prey ran. That was what prey did. This thing was not running. Dojin began to walk toward it. The Kreshval backed away. It did not understand what was happening. The human took another step, then another. The creature turned and ran. Dojin followed. Back at the camp, the Morath watched their screens in silence. Vextorath leaned forward. "What is he doing?" he asked. "Why is he not attacking?" Krixall answered. "He is hunting, in the human way." "He is walking." "Yes, that is how they hunt." The ambassador did not understand, but he kept watching. The Kreshval ran for 5 minutes. It was fast. In those 5 minutes, it covered more than 3 kilometers. Then it stopped, panting. Its body was hot. It needed to rest. It looked back. The human was gone. Good. The strange thing had given up. The Kreshval began to cool down. It would find water. Then it would sleep. 20 minutes later, it saw something on the horizon. A small figure, walking toward it. The human. The Kreshval roared and ran again. Faster this time. It ran until its legs burned and its lungs screamed. It ran until it had to stop or fall. Then it collapsed behind a large rock and waited for its body to recover. The human appeared on the horizon again, still walking, never stopping. This pattern continued through the morning and into the afternoon. The Kreshval would run. Dojin would follow. The creature would rest. Dojin would appear. Again and again. By the 6th hour, something had changed. The creature no longer roared when it saw him. It did not charge. It just ran. And each time it ran a little slower. Each time it needed to rest a little longer. Dojin ate a nutrient bar while he walked. He drank water. He sweated and his body stayed cool. He felt tired, but he had been more tired before. In the military, they had trained for this, forced marches through the desert, days without sleep. His body remembered. On Harmony 7, Mireille watched the screen with her hands pressed together. The entire station had stopped working. Every bar, every shop, every corridor had screens showing the same thing, a human walking through an alien wasteland. "Why does it not stop?" someone asked. An alien, a species Mireille did not recognize. "He is human," Mireille said. "We do not stop." The 10th hour came. The sun had moved across the sky and was beginning to set. The rocks turned from orange to purple. The air grew cooler. The Kreshval could barely walk now. It stumbled on its 6 legs. Its tongue hung from its mouth. It was overheating. Each time it tried to run, it covered less distance. Each time it stopped, it took longer to recover. And still the human came, walking, always walking. The Morath warriors no longer laughed. They no longer spoke at all. They watched in complete silence as something impossible happened before their eyes. Vextorath stood closest to the main screen. His scales had turned a color that meant deep unease. "It is afraid," he said quietly. "The Kreshval. It is afraid of him." One of his warriors spoke. "How?" "He has no weapons. He cannot hurt it." "He does not need weapons," Vextorath said. "He is the weapon." Hour 15. Night had fallen. Dojin had strapped a light to his head. The beam cut through the darkness as he walked. The Kreshval could not run anymore. It walked now, slowly, looking back constantly. Every time it saw the light, it tried to move faster, but its body was failing. Its internal temperature was too high. Its muscles were breaking down. Hour 18. The sun was rising again. Dojin had not slept. His legs ached. His feet were blistered. But he kept walking. Ahead of him, the Kreshval stumbled. It fell. It tried to rise, but its legs would not hold it. It fell again. Dojin stopped walking. He stood 50 meters away and watched. The creature tried once more to stand. It could not. Its body had given out. After 18 hours of being chased by something that would not stop, the greatest predator in the galaxy lay in the dirt, unable to move. Dojin approached slowly. The creature watched him come. Its eyes, which had been full of rage and hunger, now held something else. Recognition. It understood what had happened. It understood what he was. He knelt beside its great head. Thank you, he said softly, for the hunt. Then he drew his knife and placed it at the base of the creature's skull. One quick movement, clean, painless. The Kreshval's eyes closed, and it was over. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched in stunned silence. Then, slowly, the reactions began. Messages flooding every network, questions, amazement, fear. On Morath Prime, Vextorath stared at the screen. The human stood over the fallen Kreshval, his simple knife in his hand. He looked into the drone camera and spoke. Now comes the real test. Anyone can kill, but can they cook? The ambassador's scales shifted through colors no one had ever seen before. In a quiet voice, he said something that his warriors would remember for the rest of their lives. We thought humans were prey. We were wrong. They are the patient ones. The ship back to Harmony 7 was different from before. The Morath crew looked at Dojin with new eyes. They did not move aside in fear. They stepped aside in respect. Dojin sat in his cabin with Mirai, Sunho, and Krixale. His legs were wrapped in bandages. His feet had blisters that would take weeks to heal. But he was smiling. You actually did it, Mirai said for the 10th time. She kept shaking her head. You walked that thing to death. The hard part is not over, Dojin said. The hunt was only half of the wager. Now I have to cook it. The Kreshval's body was stored in the ship's cargo hold. The Morath had helped transport it. They had been very quiet while doing so. When they arrived at Harmony 7, Dojin could not believe what he saw. The station's main plaza had been transformed. Thousands of beings filled every level, every balcony, every corridor with a view of the center. Screens had been set up everywhere. The galaxy was watching. In the middle of the plaza, a cooking stage had been built. His cooking station from Earth's kitchen had been moved there. Grills, knives, fire pits, everything he needed. And beside the stage, under a cooling unit, lay the body of the Kreshval. Dojin limped to the stage. His crew followed. Vextorath and his Morath delegation took positions at the front of the crowd. The ambassador's face showed no expression, but his scales had not returned to their normal color since the hunt. An old Morath pushed through the crowd. This one was different from the others. His scales were faded with age. His movements were slow, but his eyes were sharp and knowing. That is Elder Grixmoth, Krixal whispered. He is over 300 years old, the oldest living Morath. He is a keeper of their ancient stories. The elder found a seat near the front and sat without speaking, his eyes fixed on Dojin. Dojin took his place at the cooking station. He picked up his knife. The crowd went silent. Today, he said, his voice carrying across the plaza, I will show you what humans do with meat. He began with the butchering. His knife moved through the creature's flesh with careful precision. He explained each cut as he made it, where the muscles were, how the fat was distributed, which parts would be tender and which would be tough. On Earth, he said while working, we learned early that different parts of an animal need different treatment. You cannot cook a leg the same way you cook a belly. The meat is different. The purpose is different. The crowd watched in fascination. Many species ate meat. Very few understood it the way this human did. The Kreshval is a predator, Dojin continued. Its diet is rich. Its muscles are used for quick, powerful movements. This means the meat will be dense and full of flavor. But it also means we must be careful. Cook it wrong, and it becomes tough and dry. He separated the cuts and laid them out on his table. Steaks, ribs, thin slices for grilling, thick chunks for slow cooking. Each piece was placed with purpose. Then he lit the fire. The flames rose from the grill, orange and hungry. Heat waves rolled off the cooking surface. Dojin held his hand above the metal, feeling the temperature. Fire, he said, was humanity's first technology. Before we had tools, before we had language, we had fire. It kept us warm, it kept predators away, and it changed how we ate forever. He placed the first piece of meat on the grill. The sound of sizzling filled the plaza, and then came the smell. Beings throughout the crowd reacted. Many had never smelled cooked meat before. Their species ate everything raw, but something in that smell reached them, something primal, something that spoke to parts of their brains they did not know they had. This is called the Maillard reaction, Dojin explained. When proteins meet high heat, they change. They break down and recombine. They create new flavors, new smells, things that did not exist in the raw meat. He turned the meat. The underside was perfectly browned. Raw meat has one flavor. Cooked meat has hundreds. Fire does not destroy. Fire transforms. The cooking continued. Dojin worked with calm focus, preparing different dishes. Grilled medallions with a spicy sauce. Slow-cooked ribs glazed with sweet and salty coating. Thin slices served with fermented vegetables. For those who preferred raw meat, he prepared special cuts. But even these he touched with skill, careful seasoning, perfect cuts, presentation that honored the animal. On Earth, he said, we believe the animal gives its life so we may live. The least we can do is treat that gift with respect. We do not just eat. We cook. We create. We make something more than what was there before. Elder Grixamoth rose from his seat. The crowd parted for him as he walked slowly toward the stage. Dojin paused his work as the ancient Morath approached. "Human," the elder said. His voice was old, but strong. "I know a story. A very old story. My grandmother told it to me when I was young, and her grandmother told it to her." He looked at the fire, at the cooking meat, at Dojin's hands. The story speaks of a species that hunted not with speed or strength, but with patience. They would follow their prey for days. They would never stop, and when they caught their prey, they would perform strange rituals with fire. They would transform the flesh before eating it. The old Morath's eyes met Dojin's. The story called them the Patient Ones. I thought it was myth, a tale to frighten young warriors into respecting unknown dangers. He gestured at the stage. But here you stand. You hunted our greatest predator alone. And now you do exactly what the stories described. He paused. The Patient Ones were real, and they are human. A murmur ran through the crowd. Dojin bowed his head to the elder. "Thank you for sharing that story," he said. "It is an honor to learn that your people remembered us." He returned to his cooking. The final dishes were almost ready. He arranged them on plates with careful attention. Colors balanced, textures considered, each plate was a small work of art. Finally, he set the best plate before Vextorath. The ambassador stared at it, grilled meat perfectly cooked, with sides that complemented the main dish. Steam rose from the surface. The smell was incredible. "I hunted your greatest prey," Dojin said. "I cooked it with fire, the tool that made my species what we are." He met the ambassador's eyes. "Now eat. And tell me, ambassador, do humans fear meat?" The plaza was silent. Thousands of beings held their breath. The moment hung in the air like the smoke from the grill. Vextorath looked at the plate, then at the human, then at the plate again. He picked up the meat with his clawed hand and took a bite. Vextorath's body went still. His jaw stopped moving. For a long moment, he did not breathe. The Morath had eaten meat all his life. Raw, bloody, fresh from the kill. He had believed that was the purest way, the only way a true predator should eat. Cooking was for the weak, for species that could not handle real food. But what was in his mouth now was something else entirely. The flavors hit him in waves. First the sear of the surface, crisp and rich, then the tender meat beneath, soft but full of strength. Then the spices, things he had no words for, tastes that did not exist in nature, tastes that were created. He took another bite, then another. His clawed hands grabbed more from the plate. He forgot where he was. He forgot who was watching. All that existed was the food. When the plate was empty, he stood frozen with his hands still reaching for more. The plaza was completely silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Every being watched the Morath ambassador. Vextorath turned slowly. His yellow eyes swept across the crowd. Then they settled on Dojin. "I have eaten the flesh of 1,000 creatures," he said. His voice was different now, softer, thoughtful. "I have taken prey while it still breathed. I have swallowed meat so fresh the blood was still warm. I believed this made me strong. I believed this made my people better than others." He paused. The silence stretched. I was wrong. A sound rippled through the crowd. Surprise, disbelief, a Morath admitting fault was nearly unheard of. "Cooking is not weakness," Vextorath continued. "It is advancement. It is a technology of eating that other species never developed because they never needed to. Humans did not cook because they feared meat. They cooked because they understood it could become more." He stepped toward Dojin. For a moment, the human tensed, but the ambassador did not attack. Instead, he did something no Morath had ever done to a human before. He bowed. "I acknowledge humans as fellow predators," he said formally. "Not in spite of your cooking, but because of it. You have taken the hunt further than we ever imagined. You have made eating into an art." He straightened. "I would ask that you teach our people. Show us what fire can do. Show us what we have been missing." The crowd erupted. Cheers, shouts, sounds of amazement in 100 different languages. Beings pushed forward, calling out, demanding to taste the food. The other plates that Dojin had prepared vanished in seconds as species who had never eaten cooked meat tried it for the first time. Their reactions were all the same: shock, then wonder, then hunger for more. In the chaos, Mireille found her way to the stage. She grabbed Dojin and pulled him into a hug. Tears ran down her face. "You fool," she said against his shoulder. "You absolute fool." Dojin held her tight. His own eyes were wet, though he would never admit it. "Are you crying?" "No. I am angry at you for almost dying." "Of course." She pulled back and looked at him. "What happens now?" Dojin looked at the crowd, beings of every shape and size, all wanting to taste what he had made. He looked at Vextorath, who was already eating another plate. He looked at Elder Grixmoth, who watched everything with ancient, satisfied eyes. "Now," he said, "we are going to need a bigger restaurant." 6 months passed. Earth's kitchen no longer existed. In its place stood something much larger. An entire deck of Harmony 7 had been converted into a cooking complex. Kitchens, training rooms, dining halls, gardens where Dojin grew the vegetables and herbs he needed. He called it simply the kitchen. Every day, beings from across the galaxy came to eat and to learn. Dojin had hired human chefs from Earth, and together they taught anyone who wanted to learn. Species that had never used fire before now stood over grills, practicing the art of the seer. The Morath were the most eager students. Vextorath himself came back every few weeks, always with more of his people. They had opened fire-cooking restaurants across their empire. The concept had spread faster than anyone expected. "Fire changes everything," Vextorath said during one visit. He sat at the counter in Dojin's personal kitchen, waiting for his favorite dish. "Not just food, it changes how we think about food, about each other, about our place in the galaxy." "That is what fire does," Dojin replied, working the grill. "It transforms." Crixall had written a book, The Patient Predators: How Humans Changed the Galaxy Through Patience and Flavor. It became the best-selling book in galactic history. Beings who had never thought about humans before now wanted to understand them. And they were learning that humans were not what anyone had thought, not prey, not weak survivors clinging to technology, but something different, something older, predators who had found a new way, who had taken their greatest weakness, their soft bodies and dull claws, and turned it into strength through patience and fire. Mirai ran the business side of the kitchen. She had become famous in her own right, the woman who managed the impossible task of feeding the galaxy. She still complained about Dojin's decisions, but now she complained while overseeing a staff of hundreds. Sunho had started a research program, studying how different species reacted to cooked food. He discovered that cooking made nutrients easier to absorb for nearly every species tested. The galaxy had missed this advancement for millions of years. On a quiet evening, Dojin stood in his training kitchen with a young Morath student. The alien was struggling with the basic concept of heat control. His kind was used to cold or extreme cold. The nuance of different temperatures was new to him. "Too hot," the young Morath complained. "The outside burns before the inside cooks." "Then lower the heat," Dojin said. "But that takes longer." Dojin smiled. "Yes, it does." The student stared at him. "Why do humans always take the slow way?" "Because the slow way works." Dojin adjusted the heat under the student's pan. "We are not the fastest species, not the strongest, not the toughest. But we learned that if you are patient, truly patient, you can achieve things that speed alone cannot." He gestured at the meat in the pan. "A fast fire gives you a burned outside and raw inside. A slow fire gives you perfection throughout. The same is true for the hunt, for building things, for everything." The young Morath considered this. Then he lowered his heat and tried again. Dojin watched him work. Outside the kitchen window, he could see the stars. Somewhere out there, beings were eating cooked food for the first time. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was changing because of what happened on this station. And it had all started because someone thought humans feared meat. Vex Torath entered the kitchen. He had become a regular visitor. He and Dojin had developed an unlikely friendship, two predators from different worlds who understood each other. "Chef," the ambassador said, "I want the usual." "Coming right up." As Dojin prepared the dish, the young Morath student finally got his meat right. The outside was golden brown. The inside was pink and perfect. His eyes went wide. "I did it," he said, amazed. "Yes," Dojin said, "you did." He plated Vextorath's order and set it before the ambassador. Then he turned back to his student. "Now," he said with a small smile, "do it again and again, until you can do it perfectly every time. That is how you master anything." The student nodded and started over. Vextorath watched while eating. "You are changing the galaxy, you know. One cook at a time." Dojin shrugged. "I am just cooking." "No, you are teaching. There is a difference." They were quiet for a moment. Then Vextorath asked, "What made you accept my challenge that day? You could have ignored me. Most species would have." Dojin thought about it. "Because I knew you were wrong, and I knew I could prove it. That is all." "You risked everything." "Yes," Dojin smiled. "But humans have always done that. We walk forward. We take risks. We refuse to stop. It is what we are." He looked at the young student, still practicing. At the kitchen full of alien cooks learning human ways. At the galaxy that was slowly learning what humans really were. "The hunt is only half the story," he said quietly. "What comes after? That is where we show what we truly are." Outside the window, the stars continued to shine. And somewhere in the galaxy, another species tried cooked food for the first time and wondered why they had ever eaten anything else.